I was so looking forward to this part of the week to be doing this with both of you. So thank you so much for sparing your time, and for sharing it with me and with our viewers and listeners. I'm sure everybody's going to gain from this as well. So I very much appreciate both of your efforts and your sharing.
Thank you to Allah for giving us the abundance and the abilities to have these conversations and to learn from one another and to expand our understanding. I've completely, from what I understood this chapter when we started to where I am now, is so much greater than what I had, and has taken something that was so obscure, obtuse, and created an entire understanding that applies to the entire book, to my entire life. That's huge. Like you said, it's changed everything now. My perspective has changed. And thank you, Allah, for that guidance and understanding.
Alhamdulillah. These are things that only He can provide as the Rabb. In that's the unique nature of these things. Nobody else can provide these things in such abundance. So they're from Him. They're from the Rabb, the one that nourishes us, the one that provides us with everything.
So we have a right to some resources in life. Each one of us. It's for all of us equally.
If you look at verse number 3, and this is in support of where we've just got to now in terms of this is talking to us about ourselves. That third one, not everybody has a known adversary. I mean, we may live in a small community, small neighborhood. It might be 3 or 4 people, maybe even less than that. I'm sure there are those kinds of neighborhoods in this world. People will not necessarily have an adversary in that society. So that third verse, those people saying, well, but I don't have an adversary. That's a really enlightening discussion there about this one word, al-abtar. Very useful.
And it's crazy how we're running into verses that just have one word and one root for it, and how it's been, to my perception, has been altered to meet that. The way they word things, it seems to be that they keep changing it in the translation to meet something different.
You don't necessarily sacrifice something which you've been given in abundance. I think that's what you mean. Sometimes you have it and you use it. You're not sacrificing it, you're using it, sharing it for the benefit of somebody else. So that's not a sacrifice.
Right. Now that would make far more sense.
Yeah.
That's very good. That's a great layered meaning.
Yeah. That as soon as you said it, it clicked. The light bulb.
That was definitely a goosebump moment, because as soon as you were going there, just before you said, I said, I think I know where you're going now with this.
I don't know.
When I said earlier, and stay close to the chest, or that concept, to me, it's more aligned. It's a concept of finding that center, the middle path in your quest to stay connected with God. Stay in the middle, right? And keep it close. Always have it there, thinking about it in what you do and how you carry yourself every day.
It's the things which nourish us, help us to grow, help us to live, give us comfort. And it is the function of being Rabb that provides that to us. And so it's following the commands of the Rabb, the one that's given you all these things. So peace and blessings, everybody. Welcome to another podcast called Unpicking Verses, where we take certain verses or a group of verses and undertake an in-depth study between the three of us. We've been taking some recommendations and requests from people as well. Thanks to everybody who's been contributing and providing comments to our podcast. They're proving enormously useful for us. We're always getting new angles, new thoughts, new ideas, new studies as part of the responses that we're getting. So, and also your encouragement is very, very much appreciated, because obviously we love to take the time out that we are to undertake this research, and your encouragement is always very welcome as well. And before we get into today's podcast, peace and blessings to Mike, and peace and blessings to Ahmed.
Peace and blessings to you both. I look forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, peace. Alaikum to you both.
So today we are unpicking chapter 108, which has 3 verses. And this chapter, and I don't know whether this might be the same for you, it certainly might be for a number of our viewers and listeners. This is one of the first chapters which I memorized when I was a wee youngster, because it only has 3 verses in it. And so it was the easiest one that you could memorize. And I used to use it in, when I was praying, or, if I was wanting to recite something from the Qur'an, I would, this would be my go-to one, because it was just simple and easy. So, so when we decided to look at chapter 108, I thought, actually, this would be a really, really good one to unpick, because I've not done this type of study that we're going to be doing today, inshallah, on this chapter. So that's my background, my relationship with this particular one. Okay, hopefully we can see this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Could we ask our resident reader to just read this particular chapter before we get started?
Sure. I'll start with 108 and read through. Indeed, we have given you the abundance, so follow the commands of your Lord and sacrifice. Indeed, your hater or enemy, he will be the one cut off.
Very short verses, aren't they? So I suppose we start with verse number 1. Indeed, we have given you the abundance. So shall I start with my initial thoughts on this one?
I would like to make a comment real quick before you do. In my electronic Quran that I'm using, they don't use abundance. They actually use the Arabic word al-kauthar. They don't translate it. So if you have that in your translation, then you'll understand why it's different. And I try to point those inconsistencies out so that people will recognize when things like that happen, there's a reason for it. It's typically biasment or bias type translation, so that you're not getting what that Arabic word means in English. I just wanted to point that out as something for people who, if they've read their book, find this. That's a point of interest that you should focus on to learn what that means.
I think that's a very good point. And I think often, as people might have seen from these podcasts, that we prefer also to use the Arabic word in the first instance until we have fully understood that word and consider for ourselves what the correct translation of that word might be. So I think that's very, very wise. Very wise.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you. Go right ahead.
No, thank you for that. That's very important. So, so in this one, when I first read this one, Inna Ata'inaka al-kauthar, indeed we have given you the abundance. Al-kauthar is what my eyes and my mind really went to. Al-kauthar. What is it that God has given to us? Starting from there. And within the Quran, mainly my understanding where the word kauthar or its derivative has been used, it is used to signify something which has been done either in abundance or many of something. And in this instance, where my mind went was that this is referring to God's bounties that have been bestowed upon us. Now, those bounties are many, and they're of many types. And so, for instance, his bounties include knowledge, the capability to gain knowledge. It includes wisdom. It includes the ability to think. It includes nourishment and food. It includes items that we can use for our comfort. It includes pretty much everything on earth which has been laid out for us to utilize for our comfort and benefit and of others as well. So that's where my mind went, that this is talking about those bounties and blessings which God has bestowed upon us. And what he's saying in this verse is that I've given you plenty. I've given you enough. Right? So there is not any scarcity in what we need for our comfort, for our development, advancement, and to achieve our duties. So I'll let others come in and see talk about whether that makes sense, or whether you might have read something different.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there, and I think it's also what it's saying. What this verse particularly is saying is that this abundance, this multitude of things is given to us from God. So we're born into life, and we have some part to play in all these resources that are provided to us. So we have a right to some resources in life. Each one of us. It's for all of us equally.
Would it also be that this verse is a continuation from chapter 107? Can it be looked at as a continuation, or viewed as a continuation from 107 as we went through it last week? As it defines that, we clearly found out that the person being spoken of, or the person being spoken about in that chapter, is one who denies and neglects being charitable, not helping the orphan, etc., etc. And they deny they deny helping people even with the smallest of favors. But when you go to chapter 108:1, it says, "Indeed, we have given you the abundance of stuff." You have the provisions available to you. It's all there. So as a continuation from having abundance available to you but not utilizing it, it's a declaration, but I believe at the same time it's also you're being notified, you're being warned, you're being the best word I'm looking for. You're being given the knowledge that is there for you, and as a continuation from what not to do. So now you're being given the knowledge. You have the abundance, be it your mental capacity, your ability to teach, be able to donate, whatever it is, however you can find a way to help others from the chapter before. Everybody has an abundance of ways to do this. It's all available to you. It's you needing to find a way to utilize it, or use it to use it the best way for God. That's going to benefit, that you're doing it for God, not for yourself. I think it's more encompassing that way. I'm not so sure it's all about just physical things available to us. I think it can be an encompassment of mental and physical, and how we utilize it.
Yeah. I think the word kauthar, what it's, because it says al-kauthar, so it's the kauthar.
Yeah.
Which is I think it's like defined. They say it's a definite article when it's got el, like it's saying the definite kauthar. So I think it's the way that things are in creation as a whole. Things are created in multitudes. So as you say, it's not just the physical, it's also the mental. So we have a lot of different mental faculties that we use as tools and ways of seeing things And there's so many different options that we have in the way of how to proceed in life. There's abundance, I think when it's portraying this, it means that there's so many different options for us. There's not just one way for us to go, and there's one option. There is abundance of different actions that we can take in order to proceed.
Yeah. So do you think the abundance here could be relating to courses of actions as well?
Oh, it certainly can.
Yeah.
I would think 100%. I mean, the root word for that it comes from is kathara, and the definition for that is to surpass in number or quantity, increase, multiply, happen often, copious, richness, to be much, many, numerous, a man whose ancestors are many, or a man whose good deeds are many, a man possessing much good, a river in paradise from which other rivers flow, or a talkative person. So all of that,
Well, I think I can pull up a verse here that can give us an idea of something that's not physical, that can be plentiful. If we go, chapter 2, 269.
He grants the wisdom to who he wills, and whoever is granted the wisdom, then certainly he is granted good abundant, and none, remember, except those of understanding.
Okay, so what is abundant in regards to what God is providing there is wisdom. So if it says that God is providing us of abundance of multitudes of things, I think this gives us a description of something that is beneficial to us, that is provided in abundance. And it's talking about wisdom in this verse, not physical material things.
Gotcha. Well said.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's very good. One other thing which came to my mind, think about al. You pointed towards the al of this, which signifies the unique nature of this.
Mm-hmm.
Is it may also be referring to the fact that what has been provided in abundance, such as wisdom, so it could be physical or non-physical things, al might be signifying that these are things that only he can provide as the Rab. In that unique, that's the unique nature of these things. Nobody else can provide these things in such abundance. So they're from him, they're from the Rab, the one that nourishes us, the one that provides us with everything. So the al may also be signifying that these are unique things, as things in abundance, which only he can provide to us. No other being or master can there be.
Yes, and no other being can provide it to us either in this type of abundance, because it's like, for example, in nature, things come out in abundance. For example, like if we say apples, if we go out and see apples, we can get abundance of them from one tree. We can get many apples, many seeds, and
many
then produce again many more trees. Therefore, that is true abundance. We can just multiply and multiply and multiply through nature, and we see this plentiful in everything in our lives when it comes to knowledge. There's abundance of knowledge, and there's abundance of experiences that we can have day to day, abundance in different emotional experiences, mental experiences, physical places to go and see. I think this is what it's talking about. Our experience is full of abundance of different things that we can receive.
Or that we can pull from and utilize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't think we have too much to argue about on that one.
I think we can probably move on to the second verse. I'm sure as we go through the next verses, we'll come back to this first one with some additional angles, won't we? I think, based on our experiences.
So this second verse, I want to ask questions ahead of time before we get into it, so that I have a better understanding. Our last podcast, we touched on musali, the word musali. Now, you guys are far more versed in Arabic than I am, so this is why I'm asking. The difference between musali and fasali. Is there a difference other than the mu and the fa? And how is it defined? What separates them? Do they have the same meaning, just a different way of saying it? Like one may be and this, or you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, I'm not an expert with this, but if I was to say the difference is, if you were just to change the first letter as from fa to mim, with the fa, it's talking about, for example, then solely. So when you have a word and you put fa before it, it's like saying, then do this.
Okay.
So with meme, it's kind of saying, let me just try and phrase this. The thing that does the salah, or the thing that facilitates the salah.
Okay.
When
The
you have
reason
the
I ask
meme,
this is because we know that musali is clearly defined as something that follows something so close as if it's attached, right? Or to that concept. We know that musali is clearly defined that way. So would fasali still be along that same context, but a different, more past tense, present tense, more of a person or a group? In other words, this one would be saying, then connect or stay connected to your Lord or stay close to your Lord. Would that be more accurate? Because the concept of sali shouldn't change at all, correct? If it's defined,
the concept
already.
we have is to be facing, or to be adhering to, or going with.
Okay.
So it's fasali would be like then to invite someone to do the salah. Fasali would be to like say, then come and take part in this salah. Okay, which would then be to say, come and turn towards your Lord, or come and follow your Lord, come and take part in adhering to what your Lord, is ordering.
Adhere to your Lord, or come adhere to your Lord, something
Adhere
like that.
to, turn to.
Yep, I got you. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's because when we look at the salah, it's difficult to put one word into it, but we understand.
I understand that. Yeah.
We understand that it's some form of adherence or following or turning to, like we spoke to last time. We spoke about it last time, as if you're going off the path slightly, you're going to have to turn back towards your Lord to get you back on the path, to get the guidance.
Because ultimately that path, at the end of that path, is Allah. That's the goal, right? To make it there.
Yeah.
All right.
Yes, one other thing I would just add to that, and I agree with that, that in a number of translations which I picked up as I was preparing for today's podcast, many translators had said, so pray to your Lord.
Right.
Just like we pondered over the last time in last week's podcast, if it was to pray, it would not make any form of, and we can come back to it, but there is no sense in terms of the context of this verse, of this verse or this chapter,
Right.
for the translation of fasalli be to be so pray.
Right. That was the
But
concept I was having as well. I'm with you on that.
yeah. And so whether we translate it as adhere to or follow the commands of or turn towards, I believe that is a much closer translation, a more accurate translation of this than so pray.
Okay.
And so we may choose different words to follow the commands, but it kind of, I think, captures the essence, doesn't it? I think so. Follow the
Right.
commands of your Lord.
Right.
And then,
So I was going to just add one more thing there that I'm sorry, I forgot to mention, because on this word salah, there is salli li rabbika. Yeah.
mhm.
So if we're taking this as to turn towards or to adhere to, could we also say that what we're turning towards or what we're adhering to is providing the support for us?
Say it again.
Right. So if we're doing this salah to Rabbika, so if you're going to turn to, or you're going to, even if you're going to say pray to or to adhere to your Lord, what we're going to is going to provide us support. That's why we're going that way. If you're going to adhere to or turn to, it's going to, for us to receive guidance, we need to go for it for support. The reason why I'm saying this is because I came across chapter 9, verses 101 to 103. And it says to salli ala in this one, where
You want me to read those for you? Chapter 9, 101. And among those around you of the Bedouins are hypocrites, and also from the people of Medina. They persist in the hypocrisy. Not you know them. We know them. We will punish them twice, then they will be returned to a punishment great. And others, who have acknowledged their sins, they had mixed a deed righteous with other that was evil. Perhaps Allah will return in mercy to them. Indeed, Allah is all-forgiving, most merciful. Take from their wealth a charity, purifying them and cause them increased by it, and bless upon them indeed. Your blessings are a reassurance for them, and Allah is all-hearer, all-knower.
is that to 103, yeah?
Yes, sir.
Lovely. Right, so this is where they are receiving salat.
Yeah, that's right. So salli alayhim inna salawataka sakadun lahum.
Yeah, okay.
Hmm.
So from the verses before, it's saying that these people require some sort of support, and they're being misled. I think from the Arabs, there are people misleading them. And then what it's saying is that the messenger should do salah on ala, not li. Our cause is to go in the cause of God. But in order to do that, we need support from each other. I don't think it's just a single person journey. I mean, our relationship with God, I believe, is personal. But in order to serve God, I think that is something that is a communal thing. It's something that we do with other people or other creatures, or, you know, in life we interact. So when we do salli ala, I think it's to do with supporting someone on their salah, on their turning towards God. Yeah, because you're doing it's ala is like to do it on them. So like you're imposing this on them. And then in this verse that we're looking at, it's saying that it's providing for them, salatika, sakanun lahum, which is like a dwelling for them. So it's providing them support, it's providing them shelter.
So if the word salli here, salli alayhim, so the word salli here would it mean support, or
It's the same word. Oh, you got fasali on 108, and this is wasali, correct?
wasalli, yeah,
Right.
wasalli alayhim.
And it doesn't say salli li, it says salli ala. So it would be ala rather than to do salah to, it's salah on.
We've got in 103, it's got unless I'm looking at the wrong part, it says wa tuzakkihim biha wasalli alayhim inna salataka sakanun lahum wallahu samiyun alim. So wasalli alayhim, is that what we're looking at? We're looking at the right one, aren't we? Yeah, wasalli alayhim. So salli alayhim. Alayhim is on them, right? On them.
Is on them. But if we look at the context of what it's saying take from their wealth to do charity and purify and bless them.
Yeah.
So what I think it's doing is getting them back onto the right course to turn into the right way.
Right. So
he's taking control there. So he's offering like a support, or he's helping them on their salat. Because the salli alayhim, it's like he's imposing it on them. So there it's saying he's taking their wealth and showing them how to do it right so that it benefits them. It's saying to zakihim. So it will it will nourish them, or it will make them more sustainable.
Right. Yes. So I think in other words, I think wasalli alayhim is almost to say, put salat on them, or get them to turn.
Yes, exactly. So if we were to say that the messenger is going to do salah on them, as in, for example, to do a prayer, it doesn't fall in line so much there, where it's talking about controlling their wealth and to do to bring zakat, basically.
Right.
He's going to improve the situation for them through this zakat.
Right. That's why and bless doesn't fit there either.
Yes. Yeah. So with the context of this verse, adding in the word salat here would be in order to get them to do their salat, and it's saying, well, salatika, that then becomes your salat, is beneficial for them, it sustains them, or it shelters them. Your salat.
Yes, because it's a community thing, isn't it, as well?
Mm-hmm. So
he's
got his personal thing.
Yeah.
He's also got the responsibility to help these other people who, from the previous verses, have been going off the way.
So it could be this could truly be then the description of teaching them how to be charitable.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's helping them to turn towards this. It's giving them the direction to turn towards, to follow.
I didn't write this verse down, It also says that Allah and the angels do salat on the messenger, so they're helping him go his way and get on his salat. They're supporting him by doing salah alayhi. They're doing salah on him, not to him, because we do salat to God, and God doesn't do salat to
Anybody else?
anything, but God can help someone on to get on their salah, to support them on their salah, to provide them, like to impose it on them.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. They can get him onto salat. They can
Right.
get him onto the turning towards God.
Exactly. Yeah. But he has to do it himself. He does the
Yeah.
salat too.
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. So in this then, shall we go back to the second verse here in 108?
Yeah, 108 verse 2.
Yeah. فَصَلِّ لِرَبِّكَ. So it's saying, turn towards your Lord, follow the commands of your Lord, adhere to the commands of your Lord. And I think it's using the word Rabbika, Lord, deliberately. It's not saying Allah.
Right.
Because we're talking about abundance of, if I just say bounties just as a catch-all term, it's things which nourish us, help us to grow, help us to live, give us comfort. And it is the function of being Rabb that provides that to us. And so it's following the commands of the Rabb, the one that's given you all these things in abundance. I think that's why Rabb has been used. And what I also took from this was that when it says Anhar, it's giving it's emphasizing, or perhaps giving a description of in what way, or at least partly in what way, you are going to be doing salli, which is some sacrifice of the abundance, because it is abundant. It is there for everybody. It is sufficient for everybody. And so I think what we're being told here is that part of the following or adhering to the Rabb is some sacrifice of the abundance that we personally have been bestowed upon.
I'd like to interject on that word as well. The last word, or the last part of that verse, I can't pronounce it. Anhar, is that correct?
Anhar, correct.
Okay. It's only used once in the Quran, in this verse, and the definition, or the root word nun ha ra, to slaughter, sacrifice, injure the jugular vein, and then put hand on upper part of the chest. That's the entire description for that. I was trying to look at that and come and see, with a more open translation, if there was a more defined understanding to that. And it seemed like to me, reading the root words, that it was along the lines of a concept of connect to your Lord and keep him close to your chest, or something to that effect. That was something that popped into my head when I first went through that. I don't know if that correctly is, if that's correct based on what we're talking about, but that's the first thing that really popped in for me.
I think with this word, because it's only used once, it can be taken from the context of what's being said here. I was unsure about the root word, so I did a bit of research into some other similar words. But if we just, because it's so difficult, I just decided to stick with the basic root that we have here. And I think if we say like sacrifice or any synonyms with that, and just stick with that and see if it fits in or how it fits in. So if it says at the beginning that we've been given access to abundance, and then it says to turn to your Lord, then to me it's like, what? Why would it mention about the abundance and then about turning to your Lord? Because when we hear about abundance, I think a lot of us want abundance and we're interested in how we can get our share of this abundance, yeah?
A lot of times we look towards the physical, right?
Okay, so if we're looking to get our share of this abundance, right, I think what it's saying here is, so turn to your Lord, and that's where you're going to go. That's where I think this next word, even if we just say Anhar for now.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it's saying. That's what you're going to do. Once you've turned to your Lord, you're also going to do this Anhar. And if we read the rest of it, it might become a bit more apparent. If we take it just for now as like, for example, so turn to your Lord and sacrifice, or because, yeah, I think the rest of it will give us a bit more of a picture.
I think that's fair. That's fair. So should we go on to the rest of the chapter, verse number 3 then?
Sure.
So, Inna Shani'aka al-abtar. Indeed, your hater or enemy, he will be the one cut off. I think what God is telling us here is that the hater or the enemy is the one that will not turn towards God. Right, so if we start from there, if we take it that the enemy or the hater is the one that does not want to turn towards God, God is saying is that actually he will be cut off from this abundance. That will be the outcome of the individual that is not turning towards God, that's not obeying the command, which is to do with Anhar, which we'll come back to. So that's one piece of information we get from the third verse, is that they will be cut off. And the other thing which comes to me, and this connects all three of these verses, is that God is telling us, therefore, we have a choice here. So we either turn towards God and Anhar, or we don't, and we get cut off from this abundance. So that's just at a high level, just to start with, what I took from verse number 3.
Okay. Then what if, this is just a what if based on what I had gone through already. What if it was a concept of, we've been given this abundance of knowledge and ability to think, and like we were talking about before, knowledge and the ability to what's the word I'm looking for? It's the ability to study, to think logically, to utilize our senses and our resources in a way for good, or in a way to learn or find the right path. So if he's bestowed an abundance of that on the believers, clearly there's a defining difference between the two types of people we're talking about, or that's being spoken about. Then we should stay or remain as close or connected to God. And when I said earlier, and stay close to the chest, or that concept, to me it's more aligned. It's a concept of finding that center, the middle path in your quest to stay connected with God. Stay in the middle, right? And keep it close. Always have it there, thinking about it in what you do and how you carry yourself every day. Because indeed, my enemy doesn't have these abilities. my enemy doesn't utilize them. He would rather stay intoxicated with his greed, ego, whatever it might be. It could be mental, it could be physical, whatever it is. He doesn't have the ability to think beyond the bounds that he's accepted or go beyond that. That's kind of where I was seeing all this as a whole. The concept at the end here, make sure I'm on the right one. The one cut off is the way the Arabic presented. Is it a physical thing, or can it be all encompassing as a mental or physical on that?
Well, with this word, it's the only time it's used again.
Right.
So
would the one cut off be accurate when we have other words that have a root that literally pertain to the concept of cutting or that kind of thing? Should this be? Would that defeat the purpose of the concept of it being translated to cut off as correct? Is where I'm going with that.
Well, what I did was I looked at it from tried to pull it back to the first verse, because it says al-abtar. Yeah, so it's the one cut off. If we go back to the first verse, we've got al-kauthar, which means abundance. So if we're going for al-kauthar, and then it's saying at the end, your enemy is the one, or your adversary is the one who is al-abtar. In my understanding, because in the second verse it talks about turning to your Lord, yeah, in order to get access to this kauthar, which is abundance. But if it's someone who is an adversary who hasn't turned to their Lord, they're probably going to be cut off and in scarcity and won't have access to abundance, or at least their mentality will be of scarcity, even if they do have abundance in life.
Would it be good to say something to the effect of not what you have, right? Because we're being spoken to about this.
Well, if you're cut off from abundance, then you're going to be in a situation of scarcity. Eventually, things are going to run out for you if you're cut off from abundance, yeah?
It just seems to me that this is more mental related. It just comes across as more of a mental related thing versus a physical thing.
Oh, definitely. I'm not trying to say that it's only physical. In fact, I'm trying to say that it's quite the opposite, where someone could have an abundance of physical things around them. They might have a lot of material wealth and gain, but they are in a scarcity mentality, meaning that they see that this stuff runs out and that they're not enjoying the blessings of what they have, you know.
Right. So, but
there's people out there who have got enough money in their whole life, you know, to live the rest of their life really comfortably, and they're still going out there and, you know, they call it, oh, like I'm crushing it. Yeah, I'm trying to kill it out there and earn more money. And it's, you know, I see that as someone who they have abundance, but they have a scarcity mentality, because even though they have a lot, they still want to accumulate more and consume more and save more for something that they have no control over.
I guess my conflict here is just that particular phrase of words, the one cut off, or to cut off, period. Because we have other verses and other root words that clearly define that phrase, you know, to cut or to cut off or to, you know, to sever. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't make sense that we would mix those wordings from one root word to another, because then that creates conflict, and it creates the ability for people to make words whatever they want them to be. I just think that the one cut off is probably not the accurate wording that should be used in this particular case, because this is the only place it's ever used, that word and the root for it. That's why that's one of the reasons I'm asking. And of course, your opinions are understanding of it. Do you think that might be correct, that it should be something worded different with the same concept, so that there's not confusion with one, from one place to another? Either one of you?
It would just be a guess if I was to say anything here. So the reason why if I was to guess, I would say it's some al-abtar would be something like in scarcity. Okay. But if we go with cut off, we can use the context to say that what they're cut off from is abundance, because al-abtar is what they are when they don't have access to al-kauthar. So if we say al-kauthar is abundance or multitudes of these things, al-abtar would be to not have access to this abundance, multitudes of knowledge or wisdom or guidance, or even if it's influence or respect, or all these different non-physical things are also included.
Can I just go through the meanings of the root word here? Because I think that will help us. And I think it's very consistent with what we're discussing, actually. I think we're actually saying the same thing. So the root letters are ba, ta, ra. And it means cut or cut off a thing before it was complete, without offspring, defective, deficient, incomplete, imperfect, in want, poor, suffering or in loss, short, cut off from prosperity or good. Now, I think, so the one cut off, I can see where you're coming from. That word is quite constrained in what it means. But actually, if we look at perhaps a better definition of the word al-abtar, or a translation might have been in loss or suffering or imperfect or still wanting, in want.
Right.
That perhaps may be a better description, because it also fits the context better as well in relation to the abundance, al-kauthar, which is what this chapter is about.
That's kind of that's where my head was. Yeah,
you're right. You're right.
Because if you try to use cut off, when it's used in, cut off is clearly described in kaf te ein, and used in other verses. So it just didn't make sense to me that it could be cut off used in this verse, because it's a different root altogether, and you can't mix them that way. So that's what created a red flag for me in this particular description. I think it should just be worded with different wording than that, because that way you separate that contradiction.
Indeed. And I think so maybe suffering or in loss might be better, or still in want.
Want,
God is saying deprived, yes.
Deprived or wanting. Yeah.
Yes, because God is saying in verse 1, there's an abundance of these things. But actually, people who are not turning towards God, they're going to suffer the opposite of that, which is they're going to want more. They're thinking, oh, but this is not sufficient. This is not enough for us. We want more. Or indeed, they may not have enough for them. So, for example, it could be, morality or, wisdom. They will be actually deprived of that.
Right.
That bounty which is available for us. So, yeah, I think that's a really enlightening discussion there about this one word, al-abtar. Very useful.
And it's crazy how we're running into verses that just have one word and one root for it, and how it's been, to my perception, has been altered to meet that. The way they word things, it seems to be that they keep changing it in the translation to meet something different, a different ideology. But when you take it back thank God I've got beautiful people here that know how to read Arabic, because you guys are helping me from my type of situation where I'm not fluent in Arabic, give a much broader understanding, a much more, I think, clear and precise understanding.
That was a
Yeah.
puzzle piece. We just found a puzzle piece there.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think, Mike, you're really good at spotting these things where the word seems out of place as well, though. I think you pick up on that really well.
Yeah, very good challenge. Very good challenge. Yeah.
Now, my question here on this verse also, in the second word for that, your enemy.
Yeah, I wouldn't say enemy is accurate. I think there's other words for enemy. I'm not sure. I think I do.
I've looked up the root word, if that may help.
Oh, please.
So the root word is sheen, nun, aleph. And the meanings are to hate or loathe, hatred, insult, adversity, enmity, hostility, malice, abhorring, insulter. Then it's got enemy, foe, adversary, antagonist.
Yeah, I think hostility and antagonist is possibly a better fit there, yeah? One who is hostile or antagonizing.
Yeah.
Right. I asked that because when I went to the next chapter, which would be the end of this verse and then the next chapter, because here it says, indeed, your enemy, he is the one, needing or without. And you go to the next chapter, just the next verse, and it says, say, O disbelievers. So I don't want to delve too much going into the next chapter. I just want to make sure that I am perceiving this verse, as many of these chapters seem to precede each other intentionally, that I'm not confusing myself or mixing two different kinds of concepts of what type of people or thing we're talking about.
Yeah, I think what we can take, though, is that this will at least be some kind of adversary, right? So somebody who is against the turning towards God.
Yeah, so someone who maybe is angry or antagonized because
You're bringing them truth and they don't like it.
Well, I'm thinking of this idea of the abundance, because if we're taking life as if we have abundance and it's given to us from our Lord, then I think this is where it gets us back to verse 2, this word Anhar. Right, so that if we just go basically over the whole thing again to try and get a bit more of a understanding. So the first verse is saying we've been given you the abundance or the multitudes. Then turn to your Lord, Wanhar, excuse me, as the one who's antagonized, or the antagonist is the one who is in need, or what else did we say for the last word?
Yeah, they will remain in need. They will
remain in need,
Yeah.
and they will be poor.
Yeah.
So when it says to sacrifice for this word here, I think what it's describing here, if we weren't to say sacrifice and we were to say things like share or go forth. Okay, so if we're turning to our Lord and we're going out to do good, and we're going to be helping people who are in need, and we see good things that we can do, I think if we're in a place where we have a mentality of scarcity, or what's the other words we used for someone who is poor. So if we see it as we are poor and there isn't abundance, then we're not going to go out and do as much and give as much and share as much and be willing to help people as much, because we feel like we feel like we're poor. Whereas here it's saying, if you have and you turn to your Lord and you see that you can do good, just do it. I think that's what it's saying, like where it's saying sacrifice, and I think it's saying as in, don't hold on to things as if, there's not a lot of it there. Don't hold on to things. Be willing to let go. Be willing to give. Be willing to share. Be willing to endure. Be willing to do what it takes to get your share of this abundance or this multitude. For example, even if it's just education, you're going to have to be willing to go out there and learn and share your knowledge. I think even in education, they say the best way to learn is to teach. So
that is a very true statement. I've been through the situation myself.
But if we're saying sacrifice alone here, I think it doesn't do it justice again. So when we're saying, so pray and sacrifice or turn to your Lord, and then I think if we were to say something like take part or Anhar, like sacrifice, which would be, it's hard to find a word, but what I'm trying to say is that it's telling you to go out and act as if you have access to abundance.
Yeah. Share, give, and be thankful for what is there, and take and give and take. I don't think it's just to be giving. I think it's to take as well. Yeah, which is why share might be a suitable word.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then it fits into the context of the next verse, is that the one who is the adversary of those who are sharing and taking part and doing their bit, they are the ones that are in need.
They're deficient or lacking, right? Because they
They're lacking.
Yeah, deficient.
Yeah, my concern is that enemy is so harsh. I would say adversary or something to that effect, but enemy says something completely, 100% opposite, and like he's going to I would have no way of, that this would be on a level. When you say enemy, that's on a level that's completely different than someone who doesn't believe or follow what you understand or live the way you do. You know what I mean? It's so much more definitive and harsh than the way it's being presented.
Agreed.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, to say that it's your enemy seems a bit like extreme in that case.
Yeah, it's to the extreme, exactly.
Or a misunderstanding, maybe. Could be on that level rather than it to be some sort of threat.
Like a direct threat, exactly.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be a direct threat. It just seems to be some form of issue.
Right. One of the words used in the root was antagonist, and that would be something that would fit there as well.
Exactly.
I've got something to add, which may add a little bit more color to this, if I may. So, in terms of the second verse, and we were talking about sharing. I would talk about the things which are in abundance and the sharing of them, the doing good with them. I've looked at, we spoke about the choice, right? We were saying there's a choice. Either you do that and you feel you understand that these are in abundance, or you will never have this feeling that they're in abundance because you're not turning towards God. So there's a choice for mankind. And I was looking at this is chapter 35, verses 29 and 30, and it talks about the giving and the result of giving. And I thought it was relevant to this point about abundance, and will be relevant to this last verse we've been discussing as well. So 35.
35:29?
Yeah, 35, 29, and 30. 29
Okay.
and 30.
35:29. Indeed, those who recite the book of Allah and establish the following, and spend out of what we have provided them, secretly and openly, hope for a commerce, never it will perish, that he may give them in full their rewards and increase for them his bounty. Indeed, he is oft forgiving, most appreciative. Wow.
So what we can see from here, and I've put this on screen as well, what we can see that those who turn towards God and they spend out of what they've been provided with, right? There's a trade, there's a deal they've got with God, with the person, with the Lord that is providing these in abundance. That actually, if you do share, if you give, then he will increase for them of his bounty.
Mm-hmm.
So when you feel that this is an abundance and you share, you're given more. And so this is relevant because if we then think about the opposite of this, which is those who we discuss are not turning, and therefore they feel that they haven't got this in abundance, they will not get the increase. And therefore, actually, they will perhaps fall into a deficit once they've used up the bounty. If it is a consumable, if it is a physical thing, then they will fall deficient. And so I think this gives some additional color to that as well.
I agree, and there's other verses like this as well that do define this very same thing. It's important to see there that how it starts, that very first verse. Indeed, those who recite the book of Allah. What does that first thing give you? It gives you the knowledge and the understanding. It gives you the abundance of the ability to perceive and gain and learn from. And then what do we do after we read it? We establish it. And then after we establish it, we spend out of what Allah has provided for us, secretly and openly. Right? He gives it to us both secretly and openly. What we do with it, that's where we have to that's on us what we do with it. But it will never perish as long as we keep that cycle. Read, study, learn, establish it, and then when you've established it, you get the benefits from it, and then you turn right back around and give that back. What you have over an abundance of, and you turn around and share that back, and it becomes a repetitive cycle. Be it knowledge, be it charity, be it whatever it may be, it's all included in that.
Absolutely. And there's another verse which I may refer to if I can, which links in with the final verse of Surah Al-Kauthar, but also links in with Mike, you mentioned the beginning of verse 109, and I think it's relevant to that, which you referred to. And this is, here we go. This is chapter 4, verse 37. So if you look at 37.
4:37. Those who are stingy and order the people of stinginess and hide what has given them Allah of his bounty, and we have prepared for the disbelievers a punishment humiliating. Wow, again.
Yes.
Your definition.
The link I saw here was that these are people who are hiding these bounties. They perhaps don't feel that these bounties are in abundance, it's more than enough for them, or they decide not to share.
Yeah.
And they're hiding these bounties from mankind, from others, and God is calling these people kafirin. So
Right.
this is part of the definition of kufr, and of course, as we know, kufr means to conceal, to hide. And what's happening here is that these people, they're hiding these bounties which are in abundance, and actually they will be punished in a humiliating way. And part of that, perhaps humiliation, is the fact that they do not feel that they've got enough, and they will continue to feel that they are poor and in want and in need, which is going back to the third verse of Surah al-Kauthar. The picture's forming, isn't it? This is all making sense.
So it's funny that they would name it al-kauthar, and again, here we go with the Arabic used as a noun name. It seems like that's another thing that seems, going what I said in the beginning when we started, how we have to watch out for those things. So would the abundance, is that the I guess the most accurate understanding we can come up with that would make more sense?
Oh, well, that's very interesting, because I hadn't looked at the translation of the chapter heading, which I've just done. And in the translation which I've got, it says, a river in paradise.
Interesting.
I would say abundances as a plural of abundance.
Okay.
Because I think abundance could be subjective to one term, like abundance of one thing, but I think everything is in abundance. So all things is available in abundance, whether it be food, materials, knowledge, experience, wisdom, everything in all forms is abundances, multitudes.
That way it's encompassing all forms. That makes sense.
Maybe multitudes of abundance.
Multitude of abundance, yes, because it's an abundance of abundances, isn't it? That's what we're saying.
Yeah, that's pretty close.
Yeah.
Okay, wow. It's amazing what you can get out of such a short chapter.
Gosh, yes. And, like I said, this is, when this is recited, it's over and done with in 5 seconds. But actually, when you ponder over it, gosh, I mean, there's so many messages in this that you find. I
mean, and we're just going off the cuff here, so to speak, off the top of our heads, and basically just the most, surface diving into, just the root words and translating simple things. And we're already, almost an hour and a half into, an hour and 15 minutes into it. And look how much we've learned just by doing this little bit of diving in and picking at the verse. It's amazing how much information you can derive from such a little bit. And I think we're only scratching the surface. It gets deeper and deeper as you go. And it seems to be much more encompassing. The way it's presented right now, it seems as if it's talking about a specific person, and you have, you've got your riches, and they're just desire to have your riches on the surface. If you just look at it like that, basically somebody is desiring what you have, but they don't have it. God doesn't give it to them. But when you open this up and you start to dive in and see past the surface translation, it becomes very involved, very inclusive. It becomes not a physical thing, but an all-encompassing physical, mental, spiritual, emotional, and it's not based on any particular religion. It's as an individual, and whether you choose to believe and follow the path, the way of life that Allah has given us as a way to live. If we do that and we learn it and apply it, we're going to be given even more abundance. We're going to be given in all forms. And then we're challenged as an individual of how we apply it, how we use those things. We want to make sure, I always want to point this out. Think about what you're going to do in any form of charity, any form of things that you're doing when you look at stuff like this. If I want to go out and help somebody, or I want to go out and teach, or I want to go walk through the countryside to explore God's creations. Do I want to expand or be charitable or help people to benefit myself? Or do I want to do it for God without expectation of benefit? I think that's really important. I think this is defining the difference between someone like that and someone who does it for themselves or out of greed or it becomes your adversary because of jealousy, etc. It could be any number of things. I think it defines that two different kind of people, and the mindset, the ability to be able to separate themselves from doing it for themselves or doing it for God.
I was thinking when you mentioned before about it showing different types of people, as I was just re-looking at it when you said that, I saw that it's possibly just talking about one person in this verse. And I think, because it begins, Shani'aka, which is very singular, speaking, we have given you the abundance.
Right, so each individual.
So imagine if we start off on that context, you the individual. So you the individual should turn to your Lord, go out and give, take.
Maybe live your life, but don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to explore. Don't be afraid to share it. And for instance, walking down the street, and you see somebody who's struggling, their motorcycle fell over or their bicycle fell over. Maybe they're having a problem picking it up. Do I just keep walking by and go, hope they figure it out? Or I'm a big guy. I have the ability to lift that bike up real easy. And I walk up and I say, hi, I'm Mike. I recognize that you're struggling. Can I help you?
Yeah, so imagine you didn't help that person.
Yep.
That would be with you, yeah? Imagine that person maybe you knew couldn't lift that bike and you just walked past and you left it. You know that would probably play on your mind.
Sure. It would for me, right. But those who conceal, those who hide, those who don't have that, like in the chapter before, they don't give those little helps. They don't even give them a consideration, right? So that's the continuation in the mentality from chapter 7 to chapter 107 to chapter 108 as well.
So we could say that here it's talking about within sacrifice, it could also be a part of the work that it involves to do your duty.
And not ignoring it?
Yeah, and not being passive.
Right.
So it's like the action that is involved. Anhar, like sacrifice. I mean, I understand why it can be sacrificed, but I don't think it's the clearest.
Right.
Yeah, but you don't necessarily sacrifice something which you've been given in abundance. I think that's what you mean. Sometimes you have it and you use it. You're not sacrificing it, you're using it, sharing it for the benefit of somebody else. So that's not a sacrifice.
Right.
So if we were to just say give and take, if we were to just replace that word with give and take, because if there's an abundance, sometimes you want to take some, sometimes you're going to have to give some.
Right.
Yeah?
Yep.
So if we see it as you have been given individually, you've been given this abundance. So give and take. So turn to your Lord and give and take from it.
There you go.
Inna Shani'aka al-abtar. This is where I wanted to get to, because this is where we loop things back around to the beginning. So I was trying to stay on this individual path here, where we're talking about one person's individual. So it's saying, your adversary, because Shani'aka as well, like at the beginning, A'tainaka is very individual. And when it's saying huwa al-abtar, I think it would be to, like when we were using that story before and we said it could be passive. And what the translation says to be cut off from goodness. So if we were to also see it as having this scarcity mentality where you're cut off from the abundance. So it's your enemy is for you to be passive or to be of a scarcity mentality.
So the enemy could be within yourself.
It could be within
Don't
yourself.
allow yourself to be your own worst enemy.
That you're not accepting this abundance.
Or you're hiding it and keeping it to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Now that would make far more sense.
Yeah.
That's very good. That's a great layered meaning.
Yeah. That you, as soon as you said it, it clicked. The light bulb.
Mm. That was definitely a goosebump moment, because as soon as you were going there, just before you said, I said, I think I know where you're going now with this.
Mm-hmm.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
So it's teaching us about ourselves to not see things as if
so
it's
indeed
not
we
been
have
provided. Everything we have is provided. And, this is a lesson for myself right now, to be honest with you, because really I feel like sometimes, I'm falling for this in the third verse here. I'm falling for that. Sometimes I'm thinking to myself, I wish I had more, or, what can I do to get more? And as if it's a problem of mine, when really it's saying here that really I should just turn to my Lord and give and take. So maybe there's something that I have to give in order to receive.
Wow. So
I have so much that my hands are full, and I'm worrying about, I wish I had something else that I'm looking at in the shop, but my hands are full. I can't pick it up off the shelf. I have to give from what I have in order to receive. And I think that just...
Yeah. So we look at this from
depth.
the individual standpoint, like you presented.
That's just more depth.
Indeed, you have given me an abundance. So I need to follow closely to my Lord and share that abundance. Because indeed, my worst enemy for me individually is me not doing that, not sharing, by keeping it to myself. Being greedy and not giving out or giving to. That follows the whole narrative from chapter 7 to chapter 8. Mm-hmm. It's as if they said here in chapter 7, this is the kind of person you don't want to be. Now I'm going to challenge you as the individual. This is exactly what you need to do to avoid that.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
What a connection. What a fantastic connection.
It flows now. I mean, it just flows right through. Chapter 107 to 108 now makes complete sense to me. It's not this obtuse chapter.
Oh, I love it. Absolutely love that one. Yeah, because this is I was reading some commentary around this chapter, and a lot of the explanation around this chapter is that this is addressed to the prophet. Right. And that, it's talking about the enemies of the prophet out there, people who don't want to follow the right path, etc. But as we know, the Qur'an is for us, it's for all mankind.
It's transcending.
It's timeless, it's for all people across all times. And so it's addressed to us.
It is.
It's talking about us as an individual. Yeah. Exactly.
As a narrative, it was given to the prophet, yes. But it's for every individual to put our place in his shoes, our feet in his shoes, and look and read and accept, and also relay as it tells you. When it says say, it's not just for the prophet to have said it to the people of his time. If we come across a scenario where it says say in our time, this is what we should be addressing and how to address it. It's for each individual.
I fully agree. And in the context of this chapter as well, if you look at verse number 3, and this is in support of where we've just got to now in terms of this is talking to us about ourselves. That third one, not everybody has a known adversary. I mean, we may live in a small community, small neighborhood. It might be 3 or 4 people, maybe even less than that. I'm sure there are those kinds of neighborhoods in this world. People will not necessarily have an adversary in that society. So that third verse, those people saying, well, but I don't have an adversary. But actually it's within ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that is transcending, because we all have that in ourselves.
And that applies to every individual, regardless of what message they follow.
Yes. It's that rebellion. That's that rebellious spirit that you have within you that says, no, there is not enough. I've got my hands full in this supermarket, but I want that one as well.
I think what's amazing about this as well is that this is giving us some advice as to how to not allow things to stop us from doing what we want in our life.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is actually quite motivational, because to me, if I go over it again, they're saying to us that we've given you abundance here. You need to use that abundance to its full extent. I think it's in chapter 2, verse 3, where at the end of it, right at the end, it says, from what we give them, they spend. Yeah.
And out of what we have provided them, they spend. That's correct.
Yeah. Okay. So we've been given access to this abundance. Turn to your Lord and share. So like we need to make use of what we've been given out of this abundance, because having a scarcity mentality will cause me to be an adversary of myself, because it will stop me from doing all this stuff.
Right.
For me to not feel that there is abundance out there, I might stop wanting to do so many different things in my life. Not necessarily just doing things for other people, but even for myself. Even to advance myself. If I've got a goal that I want to go for in life, this is basically saying, like, just go out there and go for it, because God has given you abundance, and it's up to you to go out and do the give and take, make sacrifices and accept rewards in order for you to get to where you need to go. Because if you then become in a mentality where it's scarce, or you're in need and you don't have what's sufficient, that's going to stop you. That's going to be your adversary.
Right.
There's a lot of examples you could use in that very concept. We can look at all the words that are used in the Quran that define something good, like charity, etc. What's the opposite of charity? Greed or stinginess. The good and the bad. So we've been given the abundance of the ability to be charitable and kind and helpful and courteous and etc. The abundance of goodness is there. This is our scale. We got a good side and a bad side, or as per God, the good side and the bad side. Got to get the right hand. And we are tasked within ourselves how we utilize those, what we allow to influence us. Maybe I need to go to an interview for a job, and I'm so nervous, I'm scared, and I allow that nervousness and that lack of confidence in myself to cause me to not even do the interview, where I might have been perfectly qualified for it, but didn't have the confidence in myself to go do it. And that could have been a turning point in my life that could have allowed me the ability to help people even more than I'm already doing now. So that's what I'm getting out of this and seeing from that, as you guys give your examples as well.
Yeah. And if I may give another example, which is commonly experienced, is the accumulation of these abundances, let's say wealth, because of the fear that it's not going to be enough. And we just accumulate. We just want to accumulate more and more. We want to, a lot of people, and, I've experienced this myself, and I go through lots of internal trials and tribulations on this, which is, well, how much is enough? You fear for your kids. You think, we want to make sure that they have a comfortable life when we're not around. And perhaps this is why, God says your children will be a test for you. We try and accumulate as much as we can for ourselves and for our children, and even sometimes for their next generation, their kids, and that's a very common fear that mankind experiences, and we accumulate as a result of that. And I think, as Ahmed, you were saying, in these verses, there is a glad tiding and there's a warning. There's a glad tiding, which is, look, there is an abundance of abundances here. Go and do what you need to do. Achieve your life's goals. Don't be fearful of whether, I'm your nourisher. I will make sure you're nourished. There is an abundance out there. Obviously, don't be silly, but there is enough out there.
Well, you got to do it within the boundaries of the scope that we're given. Yeah,
of sensibility.
Yep.
And there's a warning here, which is that inside of you there is this voice that's going to say, no, it's not enough. Let's keep accumulating.
Yeah.
And that warning is that particular spirit, if you follow it, is going to turn you away from God, from Salah.
Right.
And then also, of course, the repercussions that follow as a result of that, which is described fully in the Qur'an.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I must say, I was hoping that we would really get into this, and but you always unearth things that you never thought you would, and I'm experiencing that again today.
I tried to think, looking at the verses, how deep we could get, where this could go, and I never imagined it could get to this point. Not from what I saw, not from the surface of the way it was presented, but now that we've gone through it and we've done our salah, wow, it's so much more encompassing and makes so much more sense now.
Exactly, yeah. It's brilliant how picking out of each of our insights we've been able to create a more clearer picture.
A unified or universal picture.
Yeah, because like Munib said, I learned this before I can remember when I learned it. Like I knew this from a kid, and yeah, I think I kind of just saw it as something quite plain, saying that like what Munib said, it does say in the notes of the Qur'an that it's about the Prophet Muhammad and this time. And personally, I don't see there being a lot of meaning to that for me to read that like that personally. Yeah. Where when we've unpicked it like that, it just seems to be so short, but there's so much gold in there. It's like really powerful verses.
There's an abundance in there.
Yeah, and it makes us understand this idea of abundance and scarcity, and not to fall into this idea of scarcity, because we know, who our provider is and our sustainer, and if we've not got, then it's something that, for example, if we feel that we have less or we don't have, then that's something in us that is keeping us away from getting what we actually want. If we feel like we're without or we don't have enough, then we're not recognizing what we actually do have, because we have got access to abundance. And it's difficult to feel like that sometimes. I feel like it's easy for us to say stuff like this, but there are people who have got really hard lives, and they're going to see this. They would see something like this and think, oh yeah, it's easy for someone who does have a lot of resources. But I think as humanity as a whole as well, you know, we know that we have access to abundance, and to see that some people don't have a fair share of this access, and maybe some people will see this and think, no, I don't have abundance. And it's a shame that humanity has kind of done this to each other. And
yeah, I think that if I may, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think that it brings us back to what we studied the last time. It's the aspect of the community and our responsibility to make the community work. So I fully agree. There will be many people who will not have the abundance or be taking advantage of the abundances which God has made available to mankind, because mankind has accumulated in certain corners. But I think it also in here, and I think if we connect it to last week's study, there is a responsibility for us to strive to bring those who haven't got this in abundance for whatever reason and are the needy, to bring them in. And that could be many things. That could be us using our wisdom, not our physical abundances that we have taken advantage of, but our wisdom,
right,
to help to make it happen. Or it could be our skills in influencing people. It could be the connection or the network we might have to, perhaps try and get other people to use their influence and networks to do more and try and bring about change in society. So I think part of this is about, so there's a very personal aspect to this, but I think if we connect it with the wider concepts that we've been studying, there is a wider community aspect of it. And as we studied the last time, community is not just our local neighborhood. In today's world, it's the globe, because we have a virtual community around the world. And so I think, absolutely, I think it's a shame that mankind has done this, and mankind is suffering because of it.
yeah,
And yeah,
one thing I was going to say is there are a lot of people who we would say don't have an abundance of material things or access to these abundance. But one thing that we can say about every single human being is that we all each have an abundance of potential.
Yeah, we have the abilities.
At least potential for
absolutely. Yeah.
Unlimited abundance of potential within each human being. And I think that's where you say that's our work to do, to make sure that opportunities are provided for each and every person in order to gain access to this abundance. And that helps our community.
Yeah. One other thing I was thinking was that in the unpicking that we've done today, and as we've done various unpicking, this is episode number 5 now, that there are some terminologies that we see consistently across in these verses. And I think the essence of them can be found by the messages that we've been deriving from these verses. So what do I mean by that? So we've repeatedly come across salah. And in those verses, we've repeatedly come across the message of giving, of doing good for people or communities, and so forth. So there's a connection there between, it tells us about what salah is about, or the purpose of it, right? So there's a big element of giving, right? And we've looked at, in the context of these, the people who are not doing this, turning away. We've seen the description of kafirun or kafirin, kufr. So beginning to understand, okay, what is kufr then? Kufr is when you're not giving, or at least a part of kufr is when you're not giving. right? So there's a lot here about giving. We've studied, I think in the first one we did, we studied, I think 2177, and we were talking about righteous deeds.
Mhm.
So amila salihan, and we were
Right.
talking about muttaqeen. So on the one end, we've got people who are giving out of the abundances, muttaqeen, those who are doing amila salihan, so the righteous people, right? People who are doing salah. And on the other hand, you've got people who are turning away, people who are doing kufr, people who are not giving, or the feeling inside of you, which is about accumulating and not giving. So for me, all of these things, when you start putting them together, again, we come back to the jigsaw puzzle. The picture that's forming is about we have a Lord that has given us everything to go out and achieve things, to find things, discover things, achieve things for our benefit and for mankind. And another connective context here is around amanu, how we discuss how that means establishing peace,
Mhm.
and Islam, and Deen. We studied Deen as well. So you got Deen, Islam, peace, all of these things connecting, and the aspect of giving. And I think all of these form that picture about, okay, what is it? What is our purpose? What is it? What is the essence of the instructions in the Qur'an, the guidance in the Qur'an? And we can have all the debates we want about whether we have to please God by doing rituals, and whether we have to physically perform rituals, and the salaat mean prayer, putting your head on the ground. We can have all of that debate, and it's a very valid debate to have and to discuss. But what is absolutely very clear is that the essence of the Deen is about establishing peace on this earth through giving. It's about serving God through serving others.
Mhm.
And at least that picture is becoming very clear from all the verses that we're unpicking, and they're all connecting together.
I think that's a beautiful, beautiful statement indeed.
Yeah. And if we looked at chapter 35, verse 30 today, where God says that if you are spending and sharing, I will increase the bounties. I'll increase it. So if I just apply, at least for me personally, what's happened over the last 1 hour and 50 minutes is that, I've spent a bit of time with you, and which I always enjoy. And we've shared our knowledge. And for me personally, I've experienced a gain in my wisdom and my knowledge, and the way I'm now motivating myself going forward in terms of how I act and how I address the abundances which God has bestowed upon me. So this time spent and this information shared has already given me more bounties. And that's how it's proof that these verses, they are haqq, they are the truth.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. And I think also, if I try and explain how I looked at it from before this conversation, it was a bit one-dimensional. And I think through us all sharing our ideas, it's kind of shown us different angles to look at it. And now it's much more three-dimensional, and the message there is a much more meaning. So like you say, you can go away, and it's helped us understand like a philosophy of abundance and how we should go about in life, and understand that there is abundance out there. It just means that I have to go out there and give and take. The thing is as well, is like we've done 3 verses here today. So go back to the first one, is we have got an abundance of verses to do.
Absolutely.
So even if we go from before this conversation, we still had an abundance of verses. We came in with 3 verses, and we came out with a lot, but we've still got thousands of more verses to do.
Well, if I may add to that, I think if we went back to our first verse that we unpicked, I think we would have further angle now to unpick in that first verse as a result of these, even just today's verses that we've unpicked. We could go back to the first one we did and unpick it even further again.
Yeah.
So it's an abundant. It's abundance to the power of, many, a very high number.
A multitude of abundances.
A multitude of abundances, yeah.
I believe there's no limit to the abundances.
There's no limit, is there?
It's an infinity of what's available
Yeah.
to us. It all depends on what we're willing to use and apply. It encompasses everything, right? The world was created for us, so we have everything that's here, physically, and everything in our mental capacity. And how we use it and apply it is clearly the defining factor.
Amazing. Shall we call it a day on that one?
Sure thing.
Yeah, thank you very much. I really enjoyed that.
Oh, I was so looking forward to this part of the week to be doing this with both of you. So thank you so much for sparing your time and for sharing it with me and with our viewers and listeners. I'm sure everybody's going to gain from this as well. So I very much appreciate both of your efforts and your sharing.
Thank you to Allah for giving us the abundance and the abilities to have these conversations and to learn from one another and to expand our understanding. I've completely, from what I understood this chapter when we started to where I am now, is so much greater than what I had, and has taken something that was so obtuse, and created an entire understanding that applies to the entire book, to my entire life. That's huge. Like you said, it's changed everything now. My perspective has changed. And thank you, Allah, for that guidance and understanding.
Alhamdulillah. Brilliant. Well, thank you very much. And to our viewers and listeners, please continue contributing and sharing your thoughts and ideas. And share this video with others as well, because that does not take much effort in terms of sharing. And we discussed the sharing of abundances today. Clicking on like and sharing a video link does not take much effort. So please do that, and it will help others gain more benefit as well. So that would be much appreciated.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. And until next time, peace and blessings to Brother Mike, and peace and blessings to Brother Ahmed.
Peace. Salam.
I was trying to think of a title for this, and it seems to be more encompassing that it's not about your external enemies, but because each individual is responsible for themselves, no matter what. So if I were to try to title this, I would say, beware the enemy within. Because that's the worst enemy you could have. Because only you control that. You are your own worst enemy in what you do, the choices you make, the decisions you make, whether you allow yourself to be intoxicated by the bad things or try to clear your head and maintain a mindset that is in a middle path. It's all about following that guidance and trying to work towards a righteous type of individual. And don't let the concept of righteousness be just skewed into the concept of what we see today, where you're dressed in religious garb and things like that. That's not what righteousness means, not according to what we've discovered in the book so far. Righteous is that person who's reached the pinnacle of this chapter, of being of the al-kauthar, right? Of the abundance and how you use it. When you've reached the pinnacle of being able to do that throughout your day-to-day life, that to me is the concept of the righteous person. When you can avoid your own worst enemy, yourself.
Yeah. I wonder if we can apply this also, and tell me if I'm taking this too far. So in terms of the abundances, one of the things is the signs from God, the proof from God. Let's say in the Qur'an, and indeed the other scriptures which have been revealed beforehand as well. So could we apply this and say, look, we've given you an abundance of signs, right? Abundance of proofs.
Mm-hmm.
So turn towards your Lord and, share these signs with others as well. Have a discussion about it. Kind of like what we're doing right now.
Right.
Discuss those proofs. Share it. If someone feels like, oh, I'm not quite sure here, I don't think I've got enough proof here, share yours with them. And perhaps some of what where you feel you haven't quite got enough proof yet, you will get from someone else as well. If you're all in that sharing mindset. And actually, that's what's going to get you towards this pinnacle that you mentioned as well, of really understanding God's guidance. And within you, there might be a voice that says, I know, I've read the Qur'an. I know it now. I don't really want to hear from anybody else. My truth is what I've read that is the truth. And there's no need to discuss it any further. And you become very closed-minded.
Yeah.
Right? And you think, well, I'm right. And your ego, comes to the fore and you tell people, no, you're wrong. I don't want anyone to listen to you.
I don't want to hear anything else. I don't want to see anything else. And we're told about this in the book.
Yeah. So part of, I wonder whether, and this is just applying it to signs and proofs. I think what we're doing right now, today, for example, is what's being presented in verse number 2.
Right. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we've come to give our opinion, share our opinion, take on what each other have to say. And so it can be applied to that. Yeah, I can see
each one of us, within our understanding that we've got gathered in our knowledge base, in our path of understanding, have come to this from 3 different directions, 3 different rivers into one river.
Yeah, we could have been intimidated or, stopped ourselves from doing something like this because I don't think it's encouraged very much for people to study the Qur'an and just give their own ideas and, what does this say to me? But I think, I think that holds us back. That's what holds us back to not allow an abundance of ideas to flow over what's being said here. I think if we weren't to accept that if we were to study this and we weren't to accept that we would consider all the ideas, and we were to say, no, some ideas, we don't even want to hear them, then I think that's going to cut off some of the abundance of, when we're talking about the multitudes of abundance, it's going to stop us from multiplying that abundance, because when we do come up with ideas, I think it ends up having a knock-on effect, and we can go off on tangents and pull up other verses or other words and start finding deeper levels of understanding. Even if the initial idea was wrong, it might help us see, oh no, that's wrong. So that helps us see what it isn't.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And then it kind of differentiates what we're trying to understand. So it might help us see a clearer picture later on, even if it's not the right opinion or the right idea.
I mean, that goes back to our first time we did this. It's each one of us are on a level of understanding that's unique. We bring a unique perspective from each point of us bringing, looking at these verses. We attack it from different perspectives based on our level of understanding, our unique level of understanding. And when you get people together to discuss those different views, then you're able to challenge it, not saying, I'm not going to listen to that. I don't hear, I'm listening. I want to see, and then I want to confirm. So then we go to other verses and try to, where this word is used or where this concept is used and challenge it. Okay. Does it apply here? Does it make it? Does it fit the narrative as well? Does it fit the context that it's being presented in? And that is the pinnacle of what we're supposed to do when we talk about the Deen in any form. We're supposed to go back to the book and confirm its truth or not. And you pick the best truth out of all of it that matches the best, and you apply it. That doesn't mean it's the truth, but it's the best that you have discovered. And it could be a year from now, 20 years from now. I pray that we're still doing something like this and learning more and becoming more better understanding. Don't, like you said, Brother Manib, you don't want to be the one with the blinders and the ears. You don't want to be that person, because you're literally going against what this chapter's teaching. You are being your own worst enemy and cutting yourself off and only accepting this one defined way that you've come to understand. And that is going to limit, like we showed, limit you from growing beyond that, from gaining even more, from getting more from that abundance of understanding.
أفلا يتدبرون القرآن